I'd like to begin how I like to start most things in life, and that's with a terrible, awful joke, just to set the tone. And because, of course, we're in the beautiful country of England, it's themed. So you ready for this? It's going to be bad. What do you call London without electricity? Lundoff. It's a good reaction. You know what? Let's have a second one. This is the last time I'm doing this talk. Let's get weird with it. Did you hear about the lady that fainted on the London Eye? Don't worry, she's coming round. Okay, all right. Welcome to Practical ADB to enhance your life. Ooh, that's a clickbaity title. I'm going to try my very best to fulfill on the promises of said title. But before we begin, let's just do a quick raise of hands, obligatory. Raise your hands if you use ADB from the terminal regularly. Daily, weekly. Oh, yes. Good audience. Okay, raise your hands if you think ADB is actually useful. Okay, good, good. Well, in that case, I've been Ben Kadel. See you next time. Good. Good. Okay, for those of you that put your hands up, my objective today is to try and give you a couple of new, interesting, practical ways of using ADB, more than hopefully you already know in your day-to-day Android development experience. And for those of you who didn't put your hands up, I'm hoping to turn you into a hands-up kind of putting person next time. Anyway, who am I? I'm an egotistical maniac named Ben Kadel. I'm a principal platform engineer for Android at a company called Babel in Berlin. We make like a language learning app. And when I'm not doing Android-y kind of things, I love Git, Bash, and the terminal for some reason. It's weird. I also, selfish plug, this is going to happen a lot throughout this deck, have my very own YouTube channel. Oh, look at me. It does like tech, codey, tutorial-y things with a stupid twist. So if you enjoy this nonsense, maybe check that out. You don't have to. I'm not your dad. Or am I? No. Okay. Move on. My socials are on the screen. They'll be on the slides throughout. I think there's still some seating in the back, folks, if you want to sit down. If you can stand, of course, if you like. Good. Yes. Where am I going? So, it's possible that you're sitting in this ADB talk thinking, oh, I've heard it all before. An ADB talk where I hear 1,000 ADB commands I'll never use again, and then the presenter just disappears off into the ether. I don't want this talk to be like that. If you are here thinking that, then thank you for trusting me with your time. But this talk really needs to be focused on the practicalities, ways that you can combine ADB with some new fancy ways of using it with your actual day-to-day experience to actually make your Android development better. Your experience is enhanced. Not only that, I want to give a little bit of basic terminal and bash scripting knowledge to combine together to make you an ADB wizard. Now, for those of you who grew up the same time I did, you're recognizing that GIF. And maybe there's an audio track going through your head, something like da 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 da. Okay, and it's what is it? Gandalf Europop Headnot 10-hour remix. Check it out. It's an interesting watch. I'm kind of crazy as well. For those of you who haven't seen me before, you're like, shit, get out of here quick before you notice this. It's important that I say that this is a very much I show you the door kind of talk, but you yourself must walk through it. Yes, I'm going to go into several thin but deep slices of ADB, very, very particular areas, and I want to show you how to use those things, how I use those things, but hopefully just with the objective to inspire you to think, oh, he did it like that. Maybe I could do it like this, or take that piece, or do that thing, okay? So it's important that I say everything you see in this slide deck and much, much more is in this magical link tree link here, B. Kadel. So if you forget everything else in this slide presentation, that's fine. Just remember that link there, and that QR code takes you to the same place, I promise. And the very first link of the link tree is, of course, a link to this deck itself. So you are welcome to take photos, make sure my sexy face is in it somewhere, but of course, don't panic because you can get the slides yourselves. Here's the agenda. Very brief introduction to ADB. It's not supposed to be an introduction to talk at all, but I do want us to get on the same page. Then there's going to be 3 main big chapters where we focus on one particular area of ADB and talk deeply about that. And then finally, there's a miscellaneous chapter with a bunch of weird, wacky commands at the end, because it wouldn't be an ADB talk without that. So, ADB, or Android Debug Bridge. The very first thing to know about that is that throughout the internet, there is zero consensus of what the logo should be for ADB, so I just used them all. ADB, of course, lets your device communicate to your computer, letting you do a whole range of things that hopefully you'll see, like transferring of files, shelling into the device, screenshots, and way, way, way much more. That's just the surface. ADB is part of the Android SDK, and if you're looking for the ADB executable, it's located in the Platform Tools directory. Interesting. You can, of course, install ADB without Android Studio, that's not necessary. But of course, Android Studio under the hood uses ADB all over the place. Hopefully that's fairly obvious. Here's some of the usual suspects, and by usual suspects, I mean the boring, basic, vanilla commands that you've maybe seen 1,000 times over. We're not covering any of those basics. We have to go deeper. However, if you are new to ADB, or you're like, oh, ADB, those letters in that order, that sounds interesting, what's that? And then, selfish plug, of course, I do have a video on my channel with an introduction to ADB, including installation and developer settings, etc. So check that out if you're interested. However, I believe that ADB is highly underutilized in terms of tooling and experience in our Android day-to-day experience, and that's what I want to try and address here. However, I'm not the authority on ADB. I'm simply an idiot with a microphone and a clicker, right? And a stage. Silly DroidCon London. You fools. There are many more cleverer peoples out there than I is, and let me just put you links to a couple of videos or articles by some fantastic people that go really deep into ADB. So if you're interested in getting into the real nuts and bolts of ADB, the context of why it is, how it came to be, how it works under the hood, these are some amazing resources. Even Eyal is one of the contributors to the ADB project as well, so from the horse's mouth, as you'd say. Now, as the great Alice Merton once said, I got no roots. I don't know the rest of the words. It's a really stupid way of me saying that everything you see in this slide deck has been performed on a device that is not rooted. Hooray! It could have been made 10 times easier on a rooted device, but I'm a lunatic, and I like a challenge. Did you know our physical devices, these beauties, these production-ready devices, they come with root access disabled by default. You can, of course, root your own phone. But an emulator comes with root access enabled by default. So if you ever need to do something rooty, try it on an emulator. Oh, yeah. Here's chapter 1, automated input flows. These are the big chapter titles. And for each of these chapters, I want to do like a problem statement, like, oh, we're Android developers and this thing sucks. And then I want to do a, hey, what about this proposed solution with ADB? Sort of a stick and carrot implementation, if you will. So here's our problem statement for automated input flows. Often as developers, we have mundane tasks that we have to perform that take time and effort and are boring and could be automated, like logging into our app in order to get to a screen further down that we're actually testing. What about we use ADB to create a fast, reliable tool, maybe a script, that automatically, in this case, logs me into my app without me needing to touch the phone at all? Carrot deployed. Exciting. Look, man, no hands! ADB can send input events to your device. It can send all kinds of events, taps, licks, clicks, headbutts, booty twerks, I don't know, all sorts of crazy inputs from your machine to your device, and it will simulate that kind of input. Here's how an ADB input command would look. Whenever you see this green text in the black box, that's me saying this is like an ADB command. You can copy and paste it most likely and fill in the blanks. So here's input command. We use ADB, the magic word shell, which we're going to come back to later. In fact, I want you all to take a mental post-it note and pop it up in the shelf, high up, ADB shell. We're going to come back to later. The word input, which is important because we're doing input, and then the type of input you want to do. For example, if we wanted to tap as though the user had taken their finger and touched the screen, at position X, 100, and Y, 100, we use tap 100, 100. We've seen tap. We can do swipe, so we give it a starting X and Y, a finishing X and Y, and a duration that it takes to get from the start to the end, and that's a swipe. This is also how we do long presses. We just don't have a different starting and ending X and Y. They stay the same. We have text input, so the user's popped up the keyboard and typed stuff, and we have hard and soft key events. In this case, it's like the home button. Again, links in the link tree to all variants of crazy input as well. However, let's go back to our use case. We want to start automating a flow, an input flow, right? So we need to start getting some things on screen and touching them and tapping them. Like our login screen here, this rudimentary login screen. It's not a login screen. It's something else, but it looks similar. Imagine we wanted to hit this submit button. How do we find the X and Y coordinates to do that? Well, easy. We do the tap command with 100, 100 and see if it hit. Then 200, 100, did it hit? 300, 100, did it hit? No, this is awful. There's a better way. In the developer settings, there's this pointer location option. When you turn it on, you get this interactive crosshair on your screen that moves as your finger moves. And along the top, there's this bar that updates with your current finger's X and Y position. Nice. So you move your finger over the submit button, you look at the bar, you go, that's my X and Y, hurrah, job done. But there's a problem still here. I'm lazy, and I had to touch the phone as well. Gross, ew. I had to touch the phone to turn that pointer location settings on. There's a better way. In fact, there's an ADB command for exactly that. There's ADB commands to mess around with all sorts of settings. I'll let you explore them for yourselves. But these commands turn that pointer location setting on with 1 and off with 0. Nice. But again, there's a problem. I'm never happy. I'm very lazy, and that's a long command to have to type out every time or copy and paste somewhere. So instead what I do is I set up an alias, because laziness is always going to make you win. And my alias, if you don't know what an alias is, it's as though I've given a nickname to a much longer, gruesome command and just said, hey, instead of ADB shell settings put system blah, 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 it's now PL. And it's like, oh, you mean this long command, and it does the long command for me. Or PL and off to turn it off. I don't know what this is, but I'm having fun. So we've managed to find an X and Y coordinate of one element on screen, but we've got a flow of screens. We've got multiple things we need to input, tap, click, or text input. So how are we going to do that? We need to start chaining together these things, and we're going to use a bash script. For each of the options that I'm about to show you, 3 options, they get progressively better, so the last one's the best one. They all build upon a bash script. Now, if you don't know what that is, please don't worry. It's a plain text file that contains line after line of terminal commands or bash commands that triggers one after the other after the other. So in this case, I've got a bash script that does a bunch of input commands with hard-coded X and Y values that I've meticulously collected from the screen. And between each command, I just do a sleep of 1. So that's like wait for 1 second. So when I do a click, I let the system wait for a second to load the next screen or do an animation or whatever, right? And that's my script to log into Babel. And I trigger it in the terminal with login.sh, and it works. Until it just doesn't. Because the script that I just showed you, I wrote specifically on my lovely Pixel 6 device with a certain screen resolution and density. But all of a sudden, when I don't have access to that phone anymore, maybe I use a Pixel 2 or whatever with a different screen resolution, those hard-coded X and Y values do not point to the right place anymore, and my script falls over. Boo. So we need a better way. We need a responsive, dynamic way to find the X and Y coordinates, and I bring you to option 2, a tool called UI Automator. UI Automator. It's actually a tool used for UI testing, but we're not going to go into that rabbit hole. Instead, we can use it in a bit of a sneaky way. We can do this command here, ADB shell, UI Automator, and dump. And what that does, it takes my phone in its current visual state on the screen and dumps its visual information into an XML file. And if all of you programmers are sitting there like, ooh, I can mess around with XML file data. Interesting. Then you're exactly right. For example, we have this screen on the right. I don't want to block the way. We got this screen here, and we got this maybe later button in gray. It's very small. I did a UI automated dump, and I found inside the huge output, this has been concatenated because it's massive, this node that contains the text maybe later. That's my button. Ooh. And once I've done that, I can do whatever I like. I can find all the kind of elements I like. So in our theoretical bash script, I can make a dump happen. I can use tools like grep, cut, and sed to pass through that output, find the bits that I'm interested in, like my maybe later button, and then find this bounds element that exists in every node. And what is this? This is just a rectangle bounds. From left to right, the numbers are the top left X and Y coordinate, the width of the rectangle, and the height of the rectangle. It's okay, stop, Ben. Stop it. You're on stage, you idiot. Here we go. With a very bit of simple maths, we can take that information and turn it into an X and Y coordinate of the dead center of the rectangle. And for those of you who are still awake after lunch, you're with me, we've got an X and Y coordinate now, dynamically, that we can put into our tap event. Cool. Okay, good. Quick sidestep this way. Cameraman, good luck to you. God bless you. When we do ADB shell UI automated dump, by default, it dumps the XML output to a file on the phone, on the device, not on a file to my laptop, which is likely where I'm running my script from. And that's weird. It's okay, because we can use a command like ADB pull or something to pull that file from the device to my host machine. But that's rubbish. Remember, laziness is the underlying theme of this talk. That's 2 commands where one would have sufficed. With a very simple change to my original command, changing shell to exec out, and then the bit at the end, we'll talk about that later. Instead of dumping it to a file on the device, it now dumps the XML right back to me on my screen or into my script so I can capture it and mess around with it. Much better. Okay, and again, that exec out thing, I want you all to take another mental post-it note and put it next to the shell post-it note high up on the shelf. We're going to come back to that later because I do want to explain exec out. Okay, back to option 2. In our bash script, we have this theoretical, I've talked very theoretically, we're going to talk implementation in a bit, this theoretical function called getCoords. It takes one string of the thing we're trying to find on screen. It does a UI automated dump. It passes through that output to find the thing. It finds the bounds, it gets them the X and Y, and then we can use that X and Y coordinate in our tap event. Now my script is responsive. It doesn't matter what phone is plugged in. I can trigger it in the terminal, and it's better, and it works. Ha! Except it doesn't. It does. It's just that UI automated dump by default is slow as hell. Now I'm being very overdramatic there. Slow as hell means like 2 or 3 seconds to do a dump, but 2 or 3 seconds? That's atrocious. especially when you've got multiple screens, and on each screen state, you need to do a new dump to find out what's actually on the screen. Awful 2 or 3 seconds. Anyway, you won't want to use UI automated dump because it's slow, so instead, I'm a giving person. I give you the best and last solution, UI automated 2, which actually has nothing to do with Android or ADB. It's a Python wrapper for the vanilla UI automator that does some magic voodoo under the hood to make the responses to the dump almost instant. So nice. So in our theoretical bash function, getCoords, wherever we did a vanilla UI automated dump, we can now change it for this copy and pastable Python snippet that invokes UI automated 2's dump instead, and it's rapido. Now, I could show you on screen the code for that function, but that just wastes everybody's time. Instead, I would like to point you to this gist that's inside the link. Oh, that's lovely. Goodness. A gist that's inside that link tree that's called tap node if exists, because I'm an idiot and didn't call it getCoords, but they're the same thing. I just was bad at naming. So that code for that function is there. Check it out. Even if you don't intend to use it, just have a look at it to see how it's done and how I use Python snippets from within bash code and so on. Anyway, when I plug my phone in, this GIF has not been sped up. This is me logging into the Babel app without touching my phone at lightning fast speed. I can be doing anything else. And that's cool, and my script works. Doesn't matter what phone's plugged in. But we can do one better. There's one problem still. I had to open the terminal and type login.sh and enter, which is fine, but I'm lazy, remember? So maybe instead, let's set up a keyboard shortcut to trigger my script instead, so I don't even need to do anything. And we can do that using a tool called Automator, not to be confused with UI Automator 2 or UI Automator. This is a tool that's installed on all your Mac machines, and of course, if you're a Windows user, you have my permission to fall asleep for the next 30 seconds. I will wake you up, don't worry. But the next 2 slides give a visual demonstration of how you can set up that keyboard shortcut. I'll just explain very quickly, and you can get the slides yourself. We use Automator in the first step to set up what's called a service on our Mac. That's just a program thing that we can run from anywhere on our Mac. We want to trigger an Apple script that points right back to our bash script that we've already written. Nothing interesting there. We now have our service, and from system preferences, we can set up keyboard shortcut. We want to trigger a service, and then here's some services I already have. Clear Babel, login Babel, start Babel. You set your keyboard shortcut, and then when your phone's plugged in, nothing else is open. Function Shift F10 just opens the Babel app, logs you in, and I can go for a coffee and some other long break that requires way too much time. Anyway, it's good is what I'm trying to say. That was chapter 1. Is everyone still with me? Yeah? Good, thank you. Thank you for you. You're a marvelous audience. Chapter 2, dump sys. Get all the infos. Here's the problem statement. Often we can't exactly be sure what's happening on our device behind the scenes, what's really going on under the hood. We think we know because we coded it, but are we exactly sure? For example, I thought I inflated a fragment on screen, but I'm just seeing a blank screen. Did I inflate the fragment? Or I thought I set an alarm with Alarm Manager, but nothing went off. Did I set the alarm? So here's our idea. Let's use a tool called dump sys to quickly get information, truthful information, about all manner of things happening on our device, specifically about a running app. And I'll show you more why that's really cool in a second. And I said, hey, what's going on? That was to wake up the Windows people that fell asleep earlier. So this is, I'm sorry. This is a really stupid way of me basically saying that dump sys is like He-Man, Master of the Universe, asking the Android operating system what's going on. You see? It makes sense. Dump sys is a tool that provides diagnostic output for all system services on the device. Now, that's a huge, boring ballpark to play in, but what's really important is it tells you the truth, what's actually happening, and it gives you lots of information about all manner of things. Here's a list of some things. I won't read them out. To trigger dump sys, we can use the ADB command, ADB shell, dump sys, and then the service that we'd like to query. For example, if I want to find all the alarms that are set on the phone, I use dump sys alarm, and it gives me a list of all the alarms that are set, which app set it, the pending intent, and for when they'll go off. I can get information about battery. Is it charging? Is it plugged in? I can get information about an app, passing a package ID, and it tells me information about that, like version numbers, permissions. I can find out background scheduled jobs using Job Scheduler, passing it a package again, and this is really useful if you use Work Manager as well. Very, very cool. Lots and lots of services there, just like the brief surface. The one I want to focus on is the activity service. And this is great. You pass it a package ID, and it'll tell you information about a running app on your device. The information it gives you is the task that's encapsulated in your app, the activities that are active and running, the fragments that are active and running, the fragment transactions that have in the view hierarchy double, like the text view inside a linear layout, the view states if it's paused, room started, the object references, everything, and lots more. Sorry, that was weird. Anyway, lots and lots of information. The great thing is it's really easy to read. See? No, it's a goddamn nightmare. But it's really full of useful, juicy information, but it's a nightmare to read at a pinch. So what I'd like to do is two things. One, I want to give you a brief overview of the structure of that chaotic output you just saw, just in case you're interested in reading it yourself, you at least have somewhere to start. And then second, I want to give you a tool that makes reading it way easier anyway. Here we go. Option one, here's the structure of what you just saw. Very, very oversimplified, but rough. Indentation is everything here. Indentation denotes hierarchy and so on. At the top, we have our task that our app is running in and the information there. Then we have indented blocks. We have multiple activity blocks, each containing a view hierarchy dump, fragment information with fragment managers and child fragment managers all the way down to the bottom, including backstack information. Very, very cool if you're interested in looking into yourself. However, there's a tool called Easy Dump Sys, which takes this big nasty output and turns it into this. Propagating the information that, in my opinion, is the useful things that you want to know from that big output. Information about, again, the app that's running, the activity that you're seeing on screen, with a fragment hierarchy. Yeah, it's just on the edge there. A fragment hierarchy with which fragments are active, and their object references. Now, and class information. For me, I find this tool really useful. I do a lot of code reviews for hiring. So when an applicant sends me their coding challenge, I'll open up the app and immediately run Easy Dump Sys to see what I'm seeing in front of me, right? And also, it's really good for diagnosing. That example I gave earlier about a fragment that I didn't inflate properly is a real example. You can immediately say, hey, Easy Dump Sys, did I inflate that fragment on screen? And it's like, no, you didn't. Something weird's going on. Or yes, you did, you idiot. Get a different job. So it's really useful is what I'm trying to say. And also, here's a little side note for later. Easy Dump Sys uses a tool called FZF under the hood, which is just very exciting for any terminal nerds out there. I am going to talk about that later. I just wanted to say it now so that later you'd be like, oh, he said that earlier. Cool. So FZF. However, if you hate your precious time or tools, then here's a quick way that you can extract simple lines of information from that big output just quickly for yourselves. You can use a tool called grep. You will take the output of the dump sys activity, pipe it into grep, pass it into grep, and grep is just a simple string searcher. So it says, hey, is this string in that big output? And grep will be like, hell yeah, it is. Here it is, baby. Don't know why grep's a really cool guy. It's like, hey. Anyway, so you could grep for capital activity, and you'll get immediately just the lines that contain capital activity, which are the activities that are running. You could query specific view items in the view hierarchy dump and see if it's there. But the reason I'm telling you this, as opposed to showing you grep, is that you can actually append one of three flags to the grep command, A, B, or C, and it will change your output ever so slightly, and this is where it really gets cool. You can use -A with a number, and it will give you the matching line for the string that you've searched and X amount of lines after it, A after it. B is the same, but B before it. And C is A plus B, or both, or around a context, both A and B above and below. Cool. And why is that useful? Well, that activity example there will, of course, tell you the activities that are like running in your app at the moment, but the state of that activity is actually 2 lines beneath it in the output. So if you really quickly wanted to get the activities and their states, -A2, and you saw it. Marvelous. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you to the obligatory quick selfie break, brought to you by Gradle today, I think. Yeah, they don't pay me, they should. I'm going to take a quick selfie because I always forget to do this. So if you don't want to be in it, just hide your face, maybe throw up some awful signs, but I'm going to take a selfie. Everyone ready? Here we go. Oh, it's got to point the right way. Point the right way. Come on, camera. Behave. Oh, look at that crowd. That's crazy. 3, 2, 1. Selfies. Oh, okay, God. Come on. Come on now, behave. Goodness, rabble. Can't take you anywhere. All right, chapter 3, the last chapter. What does your app know? Again, we can't exactly be sure what our app knows or is stored locally on our device within our app. We think we know because we coded it, but sometimes, like debugging, we want to be sure what the data is that's being transacted. So, why don't we use a tool in ADB that lets us quickly see and alter and change the information that's locally stored on the device? Ooh, weird. Here we go. The things I'm talking about, by the way. So we have things stored on the device, and often to see what's stored, we have to intercept it as it's being transacted. Maybe we have to set breakpoints, or we set print lines, whatever it is. It takes some amount of effort that is greater than 0 to find out that information. The things I'm talking about, by the way, is things like shared preferences, files that are written on disk, or database contents. Now, for that last one, database contents, Android Studio has a really nice database inspector, so ignore that last one. In order to explain this topic, we now have to go back to our shelf of mental post-it notes and talk about ADB shell. So I'm going to take the first mental post-it note and eat that. I don't know what's going on. When we do ADB shell on its own like that, it's as though we've stepped out of our terminal session and into the phone, smaller phone, and now we're running commands inside the device. And then when we're ready, we can exit it and return back to our home terminal. For those of you that is cleverer than I is, it's as though we've SSH'd into our phone. Cool. But Ben, we saw ADB shell with some commands after it always. What's that about? Glad you asked, thank you. ADB shell without anything else gives you that lingering interactive prompt, that session. ADB shell with a command will run that command that you give it in the context of the phone, as though it's inside the phone, and give you the output. Now that command, for example, dump sys, is not something that's on your machine, not part of ADB. It's actually a program that's on the phone. So you're saying, ADB shell, hey, run me that program inside of you and give me the output. Cool. But we had that exec out thing as well, right? Remember that? Well, let's take the other mental post-it note. And you, sir, can you eat this? Huh. Nailed it. Round of applause for that guy. Thank you. Yeah. It's getting weird here. I like that. Thank you for that. Appreciate you. Exec out, right? Because remember, we changed the ADB shell UI to make a dump, and just by changing it to exec out, something happened differently. Let me explain. Whilst it's plugged in, the dump command can take a file name as a string, as the last argument. I'm terrible with naming, so it's called file. When we do the command, originally, it just dumps it to the phone with shell. But as soon as I change just that one word to exec out, it does exactly the same thing, but dumps it back to my host machine. And you can essentially think of exec out as though it's picked up all the output and the fuzz and et cetera, and brought it back over to our host machine and dumped it there for us to deal with there. Now that's highly oversimplified. It has more to do with like file reading and outputting and all that kind of crazy stuff, but just for simplicity, exec out is like dumping it back to you. And that dev TTY thing at the end there, that's a Unixy thing. And that's a file that if ever you write to it, it's as though you've just essentially echoed back to yourself on screen. You're writing to your TTY, your tele typewriter, your terminal. It's as though whatever you put in it will be thrown right back at you. And that's how we were able to capture it on screen and capture it in a script. Cool. Right, back to our topic of trying to find information in the phone. We can ADB shell. We're inside the phone here. So we're in the phone. I'm going to CD into the data directory, which eventually is where all the apps store their internal storage. I'm going to ls and, permission denied. Okay. Don't worry, don't ask how I know this, but I know the absolute full path of my app's internal storage location. We'll just CD straight into that and permission denied again. This is a good thing. Although it's a pain in the ass right now, this is very good. It would be an awful, terrifying world if any Joe Blogs or any random app could read your app's internal storage, but God forbid, maybe edit that stuff as well, so permissions are here to protect us. However, as the app devs, we have a sneaky way to step around this problem using a command called runAs. And runAs, when we pass it the package ID of our debuggable app, that's really important, debuggable app, the package ID, it's as though we're saying to the phone, hey phone, let me see the world of the phone through the eyes of the app. Pretend I'm the app for a second. The phone will be like, yes, you are the app now. You'll immediately be transferred into the app's internal storage directory. Your user will change ever so slightly, and you'll be able to see the app's internal storage. Thank you. The app's internal storage folders. There, those are the folders that make up our app's internal storage. Cache, databases, files, no backup, shared preferences. They're there for us to look at. Each of those places, by the way, are accessible in code too. If you've ever written a file in your Android app to local storage, like a local file, you've had to use context.filesdir, which will give you a path to that folder right there. That's the folder it gives you. So you can see all the things you've written locally. Very cool. Anyway, let's take shared preferences. Let's have a look at some shared preferences, see if we can find them. Shared preferences are stored in XML files in that folder. So we're going to use the cat command whilst we are running as our app, and cat is just like dump it to screen. Let me see all of it quickly. So we're going to dump the shared preferences, and there's some shared preferences. There's key value pairs. I'm seeing Ben at Ben. For email, I'm seeing some wacky-ass timestamp for last login. We've got our shared preferences. But Ben, you said we could maybe alter those and see what happens. Well, yes, we can. Brace yourselves, it's about to get weird. Let's edit some shared preferences. The first problem I have to tell you is that on an unrooted device, you don't have access to a text editor like Vim, Vi, Nano, Ed, or if you're a monster, Emacs. The other problem is that like 3 people are like, yeah, man, this guy gets it. The other problem is that we can't pull down that file using ADB pull and push because of permissions. But with a fancy combination of runAs and a program called sed, we can do exactly that. So sed is a stream editor program, and it's likely installed on all of your machines already. It takes one form of input, like hello world. It runs some sed program on it, some manipulation to change things, and then spits out how that would look. So hello world, and maybe I say, hey, change all the E's to A's, and then it's hello world. The German accent wasn't necessary, but you get the picture. Yeah, don't cancel me, please. Anyway, by default, sed doesn't overwrite the incoming stream. It doesn't overwrite anything. It just says this is how it would look if you made those changes. But with the -I flag for sed, which is in place, it says to sed, hey, sed, I'm crazy. Overwrite that file. I'm bonkers. Let's go. Do the change straight up. So whilst we're running as, we can use the sed with -I to overwrite in place. The file is our shared preference file, and then a sed program in the middle. And this sed programs are huge, and that's a whole nother talk. But this sed program just changes every instance the word Ben to Tim. So if we run this will overwrite our file, and the email will change to tim@tim, and I can open my app and see what breaks and how disgusting it is then when I've done that. Cool. But that's, you're probably all very deflated. I know I am, because that was a lot of effort to do something very small. And that sed program is horrendously dangerous as well, because if Ben exists anywhere else in that file, it will also become Tim, which is great fun if ever you get bored one day. So instead, I want to give you two tools specifically for shared preferences. The first one is a repository called prefedit. It gives you like an interactive terminal preference editor. Meh. The second one is a gist edit pref file, which is the one that I like, because that lets you pull down the shared preference file to your host machine, change it to your heart's content, and then re-upload it all with the correct permissions. I know I said I couldn't do that, but you can with a bit of fancy footwork. I'm not intending to try and shill my own stuff here, by the way. These are garbage. But what I do want to tell you about them is, in case you're slightly inspired and you want to see how I did some of the bits under the hood, then there's the links to those repositories. You can go and investigate for yourself and maybe make better tools than I give you. Oh, we've done all the 3 big chapters. I'm going to have a bite of this pastry pig. There's a lot of pressure eating on stage. That's the 3-second rule, so screw you. Oh, no, he didn't. Yeah, that's it. My credibility is shot now. Doesn't matter. We're at the extra bits category, which is the miscellaneous commands. We have 4 quick topics to talk about, each taking about 2 minutes, and then we're done, okay? So let's blast. I think I'm good for time. Oh, I am. Okay, cool. Part 1, fzf. Ooh, remember that thing I said earlier? Should we get one more mental post-it note? You, sir, would you like to eat this? Yeah. Oh, he did it. Marvelous. Round of applause for that guy. Come on. Takes a lot of courage to eat a random post-it note. I don't know. Anyway, fzf has nothing to do with Android or ADB. It's actually a command line fuzzy finder. Ben, what the hell is that? I'm glad you asked again. It takes any multi-line input. For example, here I give it cat, new line hat, new line bat. I pipe that multi-line input into the fzf program. And what it does is it breaks each line down to its own, like this arbitrary sort of rudimentary GUI here that I can then use my arrow keys to select one of the options or start typing to eliminate options that don't match my input. Then I can select one or more options, and the output of the actual fzf command are the options I've selected. Now, if that sounds interesting or exciting to you, then of course, selfish plug, I do have a video on my channel talking about fzf, go check it out. But let's bring it back to the Android context. Why is this useful? I want you to think anywhere that you have a list of things and you need to select one or more of those, immediately go fzf, fzf, fzf. Let me give you an example. Sometimes we have more than one device plugged in, and if you run an ADB command, it's a nightmare because it'll go, oh, I don't know which device to use. What about if we didn't have that problem anymore and we just injected fzf into that whole process? This is copy and pastable code, by the way. So instead of complaining, it will instead say, hey, you got 2 devices plugged in, baby. Pick one, and I'll carry on, right? And it does it for you. Nice, fzf. Or another terrible example. We can use the package manager, or PM, to list third-party packages that are installed on the device. Pass that list to fzf. We can select one or more of them and do whatever we want. Maybe delete or uninstall all of those apps in one fell swoop, or delete the caches, or whatever you want to do. The world is your oyster. Anywhere there is a list, think fzf. Cool. Okay. Next, screen size manipulation. This is weird. There's a command called window manager, or WM, and when we give it size, without anything else, it will report back to us the physical resolution of our phone. What happens if I give it a new resolution? As soon as I do the same command but give it a new resolution, it will morph and change my actual screen in my hand on my phone to match the new constraints. There's also a density command to it as well, which without anything else will report the DPI. What if I give it a new density, you're probably thinking? Again, it will morph to now match all of the new constraints, and your phone is forever ruined. You should throw it in the bin from now on. I'm sorry. If you want to play a mean prank on your friends, this is the way to go. I'm just kidding. You can use the reset command to make it go back to the start. Why am I telling you this? Well, if you need to test your app on a very specific device configuration, and you don't have access to that device, and you're lazy like me and can't be bothered setting up an emulator, because that's the preferable route, then you could maybe go to the internet and be like, hey, What's a pixel 2 size? Oh, what's a pixel 2's density? Plug that values in straight away, and you've got what a pixel 2 should look like in front of you. Or, if you're thinking a bit more about it, maybe you're setting up a bash script. You've got a bunch of different resolutions and density pixels all in a file, and you loop through each one, giving a little time delay in each. You pass that video to your designer and say, which is broken? Just ideas, ideas. Okay, starting an app without knowing the activity. This is a weird one, but for me, I really like this, so maybe you will too. There's a command called Activity Manager, or AM, and we want to start an activity from our device. We have to pass it the package ID and the class of the activity we want to start. But what happens if we don't know the activity class that we want to start because we're not the original authors or any other reason? We can't just pass it to package because this command, AM, will complain. So instead, we can use a tool that was never intended for this purpose to solve this problem, ADB Monkey. And with ADB Monkey, we can pass it -p package, a package ID that we want to start, without an activity reference, and the number of events that we should trigger. In this case, just one. Just open the app and leave me alone, Monkey. And that solves that problem. But whilst I'm here, let's talk about ADB Monkey, because it's amazing. ADB Monkey is an application stress testing tool, as though you've handed your device with the app to a monkey, actually, and they've gone and done all manner of crazy lunatic inputs that you would never expect your user to do. Oh, you pressed the just bottom left of the X button 46 times, and the app crashed. Cool. Thanks, monkey. But it's very useful because you can see if your app can withstand the barrage of the monkey. Here, of course, I pass this the package ID, and this time I pass it a seed value so that whatever events it creates, if that brings my app down, I can try and fix it and run the same events to see if it doesn't anymore. Here, I've given it 5,000 crazy random events, by the way, and it's just bonkers to watch your phone do a load of crazy stuff. It's very, very fun. Anyway, ADB Monkey. And the final one, we're almost there. Permission testing. This is a terrible, terrible title. It's actually messing around with permissions in the terminal. Often in our apps, we'll have these dialog pop-ups that ask for permissions, like, hey, can I post notifications? Is that all right? And the user has to say yes or no, right? We can answer those questions from the terminal without even opening up the app. We can use Package Manager Grant, pass it the package ID and the full name of the permission we want to grant. In this case, it would be android.permission.postNotifications, and it's as though we've said, yeah, you can post notifications, go for it. Or the opposite, revoke. No, 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 no permissions for you. No, no, no. Or the one that I think is most useful, which is clear up any previous answer to that question, as though the user has not yet been asked the question. You can run your app again, see if they are hopefully prompted for the permission dialog or not. Kind of interesting. I think so, at least. Okay. That's been really fast. I'm very grateful for your time. There's so many more things I wanted to talk about, so I just want to throw a couple more honorable mentions out into the ether. Top left, screen copy. Amazing way to mirror your physical device onto your computer screen. Great for presentations. We got JQ, a JSON terminal parser. Oh, it's so good. We've got some GUI tools for ADB in like the Mac, and we've got some IDE plugins for ADB as well. Great things. Maestro, of course, is bananas. So check all those things out. Links again in the link tree to all that. There's the link tree. There's my socials. Before you go, if you are, sorry about this, if you are a fan of my stupid face or my YouTube channel or my brand, I have some stickers, very limited edition pins, because pins are all the rage now. So feel free to come and grab while stocks last. And for anyone, this is the first time this has happened, for anyone that can show me they already own one piece of Ben Kadel merch, there is a super hyper secret sticker that only those people will get if they can prove it to me right now. Anyway, regardless, see, I'm an egotistic maniac, I told you. Anyway, I've been Ben Kadel. Thank you so much for your time. You've been wonderful. Have a great rest of DroidCon.